One of the most embarrassing and pathetic press briefings of the Trump presidency so far took place yesterday, and that means a lot. I mean, we had 6 months of Sean Spicer, after all. Sarah Huckabee Sanders, who I guess is trying to go by Sarah Sanders now, but I'm not doing it. I'm calling her Sarah Huckabee Sanders for the foreseeable future. I find her to be arguably the most vile character in this entire administration, probably alongside Sebastian Gorka, who is out now, and Jared Kushner, Trump's son-in-law. In terms of just my feeling repelled in this sort of visceral way, Sarah Huckabee Sanders is at the top of the list, and she really outdid herself yesterday. I watched her press briefing where she had to field question after question about the indictment of Paul Manafort, the indictment of Gates, the guilty plea of George Papadopoulos. And she was spinning so bad, I was wondering whether she was having some kind of a medical incident, maybe a seizure of stroke of some kind, because she was making no sense whatsoever. And right at the beginning, jumping directly into talking point number one for the Trump cronies surrounding these indictments, which is, hey, the real issue here is Hillary Clinton.
But look, today's announcement has nothing to do with the president, has nothing to do with the president's campaign or campaign activity. The real collusion scandal, as we've said several times before, has everything to do with the Clinton campaign, Fusion GPS, and Russia. There's clear evidence of the Clinton campaign colluding with Russian intelligence to spread disinformation and smear the president to influence the election. We've been saying from day one there's been no evidence of Trump-Russia collusion, and nothing in the indictment today changes that at all.
But George Papadopoulos' agreement is about the campaign. It is specifically about the campaign.
It has nothing to do with the activities of the campaign. It has to do with his failure to tell the truth. That doesn't have anything to do with the campaign or the campaign's activity.
Oh, Sarah, the issue is not Hillary Clinton. Only the most disconnected from reality, ideologically committed Trumpists could still believe that the real issue here is Hillary Clinton. And next, being asked more specifically about George Papadopoulos. What volunteer? He never was really involved. Who was he? Nobody knows. This guy is a mystery to everybody.
Sarah, can you just explain what George Papadopoulos' role with the campaign was?
It was extremely limited. It was a volunteer position. And again, no activity was ever done in an official capacity on behalf of the campaign in that regard.
What about the outreach that he was making to campaign officials to try to put together this
You
meeting?
mean that the outreach that was repeatedly denied and pushed away and said we're not going to take any action on that?
Can you explain what happened with his outreach?
He reached out and nothing happened beyond that, which I think shows, one, his level of importance in the campaign, and two, shows what little role he had within coordinating anything officially for the campaign.
I love it. He did outreach, but nobody reached back out to him. Now, Trump, of course, has the best people around him, but he had a guy who was completely incompetent. The guy was doing outreach, and nothing came of it, apparently because he's not one of these really fine people that Trump put around him. And then Sarah Huckabee Sanders asked about, so, Trump said that this entire Robert Mueller thing was a hoax, and you said that it's wrapping up. What's going on with it? And Sarah Huckabee Sanders doesn't answer whether Trump still believes the investigation is a hoax, but insists it's almost over.
Thanks a lot, Sarah. I wanted to ask about Mr. Mueller's investigation. The president at times has called it a hoax, and he's called it a witch hunt. You've used similar type of language before as it relates to his investigation. Last week you indicated, Sarah, that you believe that Mr. Mueller is wrapping up his investigation. And I've heard similar things coming from other senior administration officials. Do you still believe that Mr. Mueller is in the process of wrapping up his investigation?
We still expect this to conclude soon.
Yeah. They expect it to wrap up just any day now. I hope she's not holding her breath. These are the same talking points from the people who used to say there would never be charges. And there was a really good follow-up. I'm sort of skipping ahead, then we'll go back. Later during this abortion of a press briefing, there was a follow-up asking her, well, what makes you think this is almost over? And listen to the answer that she gives.
What leads you to believe that this will conclude soon, the Mueller investigation? Have you been given a heads up? What?
Those are the indications that we have at this time. I can't go
And
any further than that.
Indications from who and where? Sarah, indications from where?
As I just said, I can't go any further.
And also, what about, you don't believe there'll be any more indictments at all?
That's a question you'd have to ask Robert
You're
Mueller.
saying that it's going to be concluded soon.
I still attend that. We believe that it will be concluded soon. But beyond that, I don't have anything else to add on a specific time frame.
Well, I'm convinced. Now, then we get back into the George Papadopoulos stuff. What about the fact that he's in a picture with Donald Trump at the table along with Jeff Sessions? Clearly a meeting going on that is not a meeting with just random volunteers that have no significance whatsoever. Also citing that Trump said, this is one of my foreign policy advisors. He was in contact with people promising Hillary Clinton dirt. What about that, Sarah?
Sarah, how can you describe Mr. Papadopoulos as having a limited role when there's a photograph of Mr. Papadopoulos sitting at a table with
The
then
president
candidate
has
Trump
thousands
at a
of
national
photographs
security
with
meeting?
millions of people. So
He was also cited by then candidate Trump in a meeting with the Washington Post as to who his top foreign policy advisors are. That seems to fight against what you're saying. And also, how is it not collusion when George Papadopoulos is in contact with various people who are promising dirt on Hillary Clinton? A series of events that closely mirrors what occurred with the president's own son.
this individual was on a.
In pursuit of information that was damaging about the Clintons. How is all of that not collusion?
Look, this individual was the member of a volunteer advisory council that met one time over the course of a year, and he was part of a list that was read out in the Washington Post. I'd hardly call that some sort of regular advisor, or as you want to, push that he's like a senior member of the staff. He was not paid by the campaign. He was a volunteer on a council that met once.
What don't you understand? No one knew the guy. No one saw the guy. He was a nobody. And then Major Garrett asks a good one, which is she keeps saying, and you heard her say there, this guy was a volunteer. Volunteer implies he showed up to do get out the vote calls by logging into some phone banking system from home, right? He was a volunteer in the sense that he, I guess, wasn't paid. But that suggests he just showed up. You don't just show up and are placed at a table with Donald Trump and Jeff Sessions to talk about policy, and she just spins into oblivion.
Major.
Sir, just so we have the terminology straight, when you say George Papadopoulos had no official capacity, what do you mean by that?
I mean, he was a volunteer on the campaign and a volunteer member of an advisory council that met one time.
So his activities were entirely of his invention. No one asked him to do any of these things. Is that what you're telling the American public?
I'm telling you that he was a volunteer member of an advisory council that literally met one time.
That just means he wasn't paid. The fact that you're not paid doesn't mean you're not directly involved with high-level discussions in a campaign. It's not an answer. And then Sarah Huckabee Sanders is asked, well, how did Donald Trump react when he heard the news of these indictments?
Can I follow up on Mueller? You've spoken with the president today.
Yes, I have.
Can you give us a little bit about his reaction to the news this morning? Obviously, news that swept the nation's capital. But how did the president respond to this news about two people who did work for his campaign? Was he disappointed that Paul Manafort received this news today that he was being charged on these 12 counts?
He responded the same way the rest of us in the White House have, and that's without a lot of reaction because it doesn't have anything to do with us.
She wants us to believe that when the White House heard that Trump's campaign manager was being charged with 12 counts of criminal activity, they were super calm as cucumbers. We didn't really have much of a reaction because it has nothing to do with us. Let's move on to the transgender military ban or something like that. No one believes this. And in fact, numerous reports say that Trump has been absolutely seething since the release of these indictments. He's been glued to big screen TVs, watching what all the TV networks are reporting on. Even the Trump administration isn't so naive that they'd think that this is no big deal. And then starting to wrap up the questioning here, asked about, hey, Trump says that he would hire the best people, but he seems to be hiring terrible people. Does this tell us anything about Trump's ability to hire the best people?
But doesn't it speak to the president's judgment that he would choose to have these two individuals in very high positions, having allegedly committed these crimes in the years leading up to their roles?
These were seasoned operatives, not, you make it sound like they were, regular offenders that have been in massive amounts of trouble. These were seasoned operatives that worked on a number of campaigns. Paul Manafort was brought in to lead the delegate process, which he did, and was dismissed not too long after that.
And the president has no regrets.
Again, I didn't ask him that question specifically.
Yeah, no answer. No answer about what this says about Trump's hiring skills, because of course they're terrible, even though they're one of the things Trump has run on. And lastly, another direct question about what about Trump hiring the best people?
The two people who worked for the president, are now under indictment. One has pleaded guilty, and he promised to hire only the best people. Is this an example of the best people to hire?
Look, again, this goes back to these were activities that took place outside of the scope of the campaign. I can't comment on anything they did.
But are these the best people to hire?
Look, the president hired Paul Manafort to handle the delegate process, which he did, and he was dismissed not too long after that.
65 lies. Seth Abramson, attorney Seth Abramson, outlined the full list of 65 lies that Sarah Huckabee Sanders told during a 20-something minute press briefing. We're showing you just a couple tweets from Seth Abramson with the first handful or so of lies. 65 lies in 20 plus minutes without a single actual substantive answer about anything throughout the entire press briefing. You tell me how well things are going in the Trump White House right now.